Hey everybody, it's Mo Bunnell, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue, and I've got James Barclay on the show today. He's CEO of Passel Inc., and they are a leading provider of ways that you can get your name out there, that you can post content digitally, and that you can do things in the digital world that add value and attract clients to you. Perfect person for this episode. And what I think is interesting about this one is we dig into sort of James' past. He gives a little bit of a background about himself. Stick through that part because there is some amazing content out at the end of this episode where he gives some really great advice on what he's seen in helping hundreds and hundreds, I guess thousands actually, of deeply technical experts get their name out there digitally and add value in the digital world. And he tells you exactly how to do it. You need the context for his background, for his life up front. That's providing context, but the real meat of this is the back end of this episode. So stick around for that because it is really, really good. Now, if you want our best thinking on how you can interact with your clients when you're busy and deepen relationships very quickly, we've got a thought piece called High Impact Relationship Deepeners. You can get it right away. And all you have to do is go to Grow Big Playbook to sign up and download it. That's growbigplaybook.com. So head over there to get your high impact relationship deepeners. Our clients are loving this thought piece. All right, here's James Barclay. Hey everybody, it's Mo Bunnell, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I'm smiling from ear to ear because I have James Barclay. He's just one of the funniest and most deepest expert people that I know. And James, you're CEO of Passle Inc., one of the leading providers of technology that helps people get their name out there on the internet, that helps them write posts, get the content out there, make it really, really easy for busy professionals. So I'm excited to have you on the show. Here's our first question. James, I'm actually really interested in this. When did you realize that business development was a good thing, that growth was great, that this was something that you wanted to sort of lean into a little bit?
Sure. Gosh, that's a tough one, isn't it? It goes back a long time. So I was 22, straight out of university. Been traveling for a year around India and Nepal. Got home, needed to earn a dollar. Had a look through the newspaper at the time at jobs, and there was a conference organizer job, and I thought I'm pretty good at organizing stuff. And ultimately, when I went to the interview, I realized that conference organizing was all about persuading people that they should speak at your event for no money and then trying to sell tickets on the back of it. And I like the simplicity of it, but I really enjoyed the commercial aspect of it. I like the persuasion, and essentially it was selling ideas. And the selling of ideas is what we ultimately always do, is sell ideas and get somebody to believe in us.
Yeah, I love that answer, and I didn't actually know that story. It conjured up like maybe you brought that up at one point, but I had forgotten about it. So you start selling ideas, you start getting speakers lined up, which I'm sure was fun to meet people who are top-notch speakers, and then you're obviously trying to bring in people to attend the event and all that. So things progress, and like when did you realize? Because now you're like this deep technical expert.
Mm.
You guys, while you make things simple, the technology Passel provides is really, really complex, right? You make it easy to use, but there's a lot behind it. And you're CEO of the US
Yep.
based operations. So as you progressed, like when did you realize now adding expertise with this idea of being great at growth was good?
Okay, so you've asked for 1 minute answers, and it might be more than 1 minute. So bear with,
That's
bear with. So conferences we were doing in the 90s, and I was selling dodgy conferences in dodgy countries. So it's like India chemicals and Pakistan oil and gas and things like that, which I'm not sure I would do now. Anyway, what we realized was the internet was a big thing in the 90s, and what we started to do is sell conferences like literally the internet for Great Britain and the internet for South Africa. And then we started going down into the areas of the internet like streaming media and digital distribution of music and all these things. And we had to build websites. And to build websites, you could at the time traditionally go, okay, we're going to put a brochure on a website. We're just going to talk about what we do, because we're in a direct mail business, right? But we came up with these websites. We're like, well, that's boring. Why don't we talk about what's going to be in the conference all the time, and then we could sell the conference on the back of the website. So the website became a content site. We didn't know it's called content. We called it e-news. We brought in journalists, we wrote stuff ourselves, but it was all about what the conference covered. And what we realized then was, well, what we built then were content websites back in the 90s to sell conferences. So our business was conferences, but what we did is built websites. So we were using the internet to sell stuff. And that was fascinating. The next firm that business got sold, and the same guys that I work with at Passel were in that business. Now we were in a different business, which was software as a service for pictures on credit cards. Okay, and this is all linked, don't worry. Pictures on credit cards, and it was, you could put a picture of your dog, your cat, your kids onto your Wells Fargo card, your Capital One card, and that made you spend more money on them, basically. But although you look like you're on Wells Fargo, that technology was ours. It was software as a service. At that point, we became experts in this ridiculous niche, right, of the internet, financial services, card products, and we were like, we know a lot about this. We should write a blog, because it was blogging time. This was 2009. Not even, actually 2005. And we tried writing a blog, and we just failed, because you start with a blank screen and you go, right, what am I going to write about? What's my genius point? What's my thought leadership? And I did it once, right, and failed. We shot the blog, long and short story. We told that business was sold, and the guys who set up Passel, Adam and Tom, who were in charge of that business, the software as a service business, they were like, we can't have been the only experts who are rubbish at showcasing our expertise online. You know, this must be a thing. And on the back of that, they built Passel. Okay. And Passel is all about how do you get the expertise out of your brain, your niche knowledge, and whether you're an insurance or whether you're a consultant or whether you're a lawyer, you've got this ridiculous amount of knowledge in your head. Showcasing that online is crucial, because that's where everyone's experiencing you. Especially now with COVID, no one's going to your posh office. No one's seeing your artwork and your lovely sofa. They're seeing you online. And so that was, I told you it was long. That's the long and short of it, is how do you then showcase that expertise online? And then we're really excited about enabling and empowering those experts to be able to do that online showcase.
So now I love,
so it's that's fun the story though.
No, I love it. And I think having a British accent adds like 20%. Like it's a 20% better story.
I need it.
If somebody from Indiana, where I grew up, told the same story, it just wouldn't be as good. But, so let's get to it. So I think this is really interesting for the audience. So now they understand your background. You're running this big organization within the States. So our audience are deep technical experts, right? And they've maybe heard this message, I need to get my name out there. I'm doing air quotes around that, audio listeners. Or maybe they think, gosh, I want to write more. I want to influence people. I want to bring people to me because I've got thoughts in my head. What do I do? Mm-hmm. So give us right now, like go straight to it. What are the top three? I'm going to have you focus on three. What are the top three things an expert needs to know to get their content out online in a way that works?
Okay. Number one, do something, don't do nothing. And realize that you might not be great at it straight away. Okay, so often when you get to a point of expertise, you're older, you're used to being brilliant. Don't worry about not being brilliant straight away. Just get there and do it. So do something, not nothing. Second one I would say is run an audit of LinkedIn of who you're connected to. It's very straightforward. You go to me, you drop down to privacy, and you drop down to get my details, and you'll find out who you're connected to. Audit it. Put that against who gives you money in the world. And if you're not linked in with the people who give you money, because they're people, not organizations, then make sure you resolve that. Next is then regularly write, I would say, short, digestible content that's client relevant and that's timely. And do that once a week, once a month, whatever it is, but do it. And you don't need to write thousands and thousands of words. 300 words seems to outperform 1,000 words in our experience.
Yeah. Well, this is really great. So do something, not nothing, audit who you're connected with and resolve it if you have gaps. And then this idea of regularly write short and client-focused relevant content. So now let's double click on that. So you've worked with hundreds and hundreds of lawyers, professionals, consultants. What are you finding work the best for people that are writing content?
Sure. Number one is it has to be really easy. Number one. So do the simple, stupid stuff. Don't overthink it. Get over your own imposter syndrome. Because don't outsource it. Do it yourself. You wouldn't send someone else into a meeting for you physically. So you shouldn't pretend to be. Someone shouldn't be pretending to be you online. I'd say that, that would be the kickoff.
Yeah. So obviously, Passel makes this really easy, and we'll be soft about that. Obviously, as
Sure.
we talk to everybody. Although Passel's awesome, folks. It really is. I use it. But this idea of really easy. You one of the things I've learned from you is not feeling like you have to create all the content yourself from scratch, but maybe putting your own 2 cents or your own thoughts on top of another thought leader, or just promoting another article, or something that just happened in the appellate courts, or new regulations that are coming out, or a new thought piece someone else at your firm wrote, or even data or research that you just had coming out. But taking that and adding your own flavor on top of it and getting it out there, that can be a really easy way to do it. So your thoughts on sort of how to make this idea, or how to make writing or publishing a regular habit?
Sure. I think number one, don't think that you're suddenly going to be a journalist at the New York Times, that you need to learn a whole brand new skill.
Yeah.
Most of the folk we mainly talk to lawyers, in the commercial sense. They have 15 to 20 people in their world who give them 80% of their billable hours. That's also true of a lot of consultants, people like in Deloitte and things like that. Picture one of them. You've known them for years. You've been to their family barbecues. They've been to your offices. You've taken them to the football. Picture them, write something that you know will resonate with them, but do it in a public space. So do it on your blog, do it on LinkedIn, wherever it is, and do that regularly. But just picture one of those people. Of course, the other thing to do is ask them what might be useful to them.
Yeah.
You're on a chat with them. No one minds being asked, hey, what are you worried about? What do you see as an opportunity? What is it that we should be considering for you? Everyone's going to love those questions. So get those questions, get the answers, write them down, and share them in a public space like LinkedIn or on your blog, and do that regularly. The other thing is, if you can't make the leap from doing nothing to writing a post, share your company's stuff. Share someone else's post and just write a couple of lines. This is interesting because. Interact is what I'm saying. Be digitally active as opposed to inactive, because when you're very busy and you do nothing, your clients and your prospects aren't thinking, oh, James is very busy, he hasn't got time to be present online. They're just not thinking about you because you're not present.
Yeah. Hey, one last question in this, because I think I learned this from you, and boy, it has stuck with me for years. I learned this from you when you went through Grow Big Public training. I think I either taught that class, it was long enough ago, or actually popped in or whatever, because I knew you were there. And there was a breakout
You did
room.
the highlights. You came in and did the glory.
Yeah, that's what I did.
It
I was
was
like,
awesome.
I just told some stories. Oh, I know it. I came by at mealtime. I was always there.
You came by.
Um,
That
but
was definitely a happy hour.
but I did drop in right when you were saying something, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. So I just want you to elaborate on this, because I think it's the perfect ending to this episode. And it's this, that most people, when they think about writing, they think about writing for everybody. And you already mentioned this a second ago, but I want you to go deeper on it. But you taught me write for one person, because what that does is it drives specificity. It puts you in the mind of one reader, and likely if one reader or one audience member needs that thing, many more do. But if you try to write for the average of everybody, you end up with this milk toast. It doesn't help anybody. But if you actually think Sally Smith, and you write for Sally, one of your clients or prospects, and you write it and you put that in the public domain, when Sally reads it, she's like, wow, this really connects. But there's likely lots of other people thinking about the same thing. So just go a little bit deeper on that, and I think that'll be the perfect ending to this episode.
There's a couple of things there. Number one, coming back to those, know where your money comes from. Wherever, if you're a lawyer or a consultant or you sell stuff, it doesn't matter. We're there to make a dollar. So know where your money comes from. Make sure that you're writing content that will resonate with those 15, those 20 people, that one person.
Yep.
2 reasons. Number one, they're much more likely to have you as front of mind if you're doing that. You can send them that content and say, hey, he's thinking of you.
Yep.
So that's grand. Also, and more importantly, I think they are the most likely people to recommend and refer you. You always talk about your fans, building people to be your top fans, your top
raving fans. Yep.
Your raving fans. So if you can create a piece of content that's useful to them and they look good sharing it because it's useful, then they're going to recommend it to their people. And I always think of, and I stole this, but the online world is the same as the offline world. We have, they reckon, 5 really, really close contacts, friends and family. You know, if you buy a house, we're going to talk to them. 15 close friends, 45 in your friendship group, right? 150 in your wider friendship group, and you top out at the people you know at about 450. And they reckon that's it, and it goes way back, you know, to when sapiens first started wandering around.
Yeah.
And the way this was described to me, and I think this is the one I shared with you, where it's morbid, is, you know, if I died, those 5 people would be crying. The 5 people would be holding my coffin. The 15 would be crying at my this is a bit morbid. 15 would be at my funeral crying. My 45 would be at my funeral. My 15 would know the funeral's on, and know when it is. The 45 would know the funeral was happening, and the 150 and 450 would know I'm dead. I think that's right. So, but it's those core people. Now, what I do is when I write for those 15, thinking of those 45. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I write for one person in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's likely then to spread out a bit like a pebble dropping in water and the waves go out. You know, it's all about spheres of influence.
Yeah.
I hope I explained that all right.
And the crazy thing about that, and it hit me like a ton of bricks and completely has changed my writing. But when you write for those 15, I think that people resist. I think people tentatively resist it because they're like, well, but I need to write for more than 15 people. But the thing is, there are 100x, 1000x that many of those 15 people, and they're the ones you want to meet. So you write for this very specific persona, and then it spreads like crazy. You're letting raving fans rave because those 15, like you said, are going to share, post, tell somebody, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah, you're giving your raving fans ammunition.
I love it. Okay. Well, there, we ended a blog post with death and ammunition. I mean, what else? Or, no,
sorry.
Yeah, can't be better than that. All right. Hey, James, people are going to want more of your big brain, more of your thought leadership. I know you're open to having calls with people, things like that. Where should they go to connect with you?
Sure. Find me on LinkedIn, James Barclay, on LinkedIn, Passel Inc. Or you can go to passle.net and find me, or james@passle.net. Any which way, but yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
I love it. We'll put all those down in the show notes, everybody. So if you're driving, barreling down the highway, you can just come back to the episode and press a link and you'll be all set. James, thanks for being on the show. Everybody, don't forget to subscribe, follow, set all those notifications because your phone's going to explode, because we got 4 more episodes coming with James Barclay, and they're all going to be as good as this one. James, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to see you.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here. I'm having so much fun. I I love this show, and I love interesting people, and they weren't available, so I've got James Barclay with me today. No, just joking. But James just seriously dropped the knowledge in the last episode on how you get your presence out there, how you promote yourself digitally, how you help others digitally. And we're going to continue on that theme throughout all 5 of these episodes. But the headline on this one, James Barclay, CEO of Passel Inc., the headline question for this episode is, I want you to tell me your personal definition of business development.
Okay. I think growth, you have to look at your leading indicators, not your lagging ones. For me, it's your behavior, it's your values, it's what you do every day that will put yourself in the right position to win. If you focus always at the end of the pipeline, you just end up scrabbling round for closes, and you'll never get them because you usually look desperate. So for me, it's you set yourself. It's the foundation. It's the values of you. It's the values of your firm. It's how you approach everything. And then by doing that, you'll come up with the right tactics to be able to sell effectively to the people who are buying from you, and you'll fit their buying behaviors and their cycles.
Oh, I love that. It's so good. So if we run down the behavior path, which is obviously something that we care a lot about, for you personally, and you don't have to quote Grow Big Training or Snowball System or anything, just talk in normal everyday language. What are your behaviors? Like you're running a big entity, you're running Passel in the US. What things are you doing to make sure that you're helping growth as much as you can?
Well, I think what you just said there was really important, which is helping. And this is something that I got in your course and was absolutely right. And what was nice is you put it into kind of the boxes, whereas I'd always just done it, but hadn't really understood what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that is every time you reach out to someone, you help them.
Yep.
And then at some point they will ask you what you do and be interested in what you sell. And if you do that, that's far more effective than trying to go to them saying, hey, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff,
Yeah.
because that's going to close the conversation. So we have a thing, and this is the Passel thing, but we have a thing at a conference that you never mention Passel until someone asks. And even when they ask, they've got to ask twice.
Oh, wow. So tell me more. How does that play out in a meeting?
So if you're for example, at a conference, we do a lot of events, and you sit down and they say, hey, what do? You don't answer. You ask them about themselves. You ask them about what their challenges are. Not in a salesy way. You literally ask them about themselves. You try and build some sort of connection, and you talk to them, and then you try and hopefully by nature, you hook onto the things that might be of interest to them and the things that you could help them with. And maybe that's an introduction to someone, or maybe that's something you did that might help them and an experience you had. And eventually, what we found is that people then tend to say, hey, well, really, do tell me what you do.
Yeah.
At that point, you're in a much stronger position,
Yeah.
as far as actually influencing them and hopefully providing them with something that's useful.
Yeah, well, as you saw in Grow Big training, curiosity is a really powerful motivator. It's an intrinsic motivator, meaning audience, you don't, James already knows this, but you don't need a reward to love the experience of curiosity. It's why none of us buys a big mystery novel we're really looking forward to and then get home and immediately go to the last page and see who did it. Like, that would be awful, right? We're almost disappointed when we find out who did it. The story's over. So we love to experience curiosity. So what I think is interesting about what you mentioned, James, like, you don't talk about Passel until somebody asks twice. Tell me what that that might have been felt weird the first time you did it, or became, as part of the culture, and you're one of the early founders. But what is it? I guess the question is this: what do you see it feels like to the other side when they ask, you turn it back on them, they ask again, and then you're okay talking about yourself? What does that look like?
I think there's particularly, I've moved from the UK to the US. In the US, sales is very direct and quite abrasive,
Yep.
actually.
Yep.
And I went through buying a car here, and it was horrific.
Well, most of us would say that too. So in the States,
Absolutely, no. I think everyone's found that horrific, and so we try and do the opposite, I suppose. You want to be in a position of you don't know if they need what you're selling, number one.
Yep.
So you need to find that out.
Yes.
Before you can sell the thing yourself. We call it the broken washing machine. You're not in the market for a washing machine until your washing machine breaks, and then you're really in the market for a washing machine. Now, what you can do is you can keep in contact with those people maybe for years until the washing machine breaks.
Yep.
But when the washing machine breaks, they know exactly that you're the person who might be able to solve their problem, and that necessitates patience. And I hate it because I'm deeply impatient as a human being, but that's what I've had to learn is the patience to know that you provide a solution when they need it, as opposed to forcing a solution down their throat when they don't need it, because you're just going to fail then in the long term, because they'll just never talk to you. So the curiosity followed by the patience of knowing when actually they need your input. And before that, and this is what you talk an awful lot about, is you just help them. I remember you during COVID, the first thing you did was phone me, hey, how can I help? Now, how can I help you, James? And I'm like, well, you've probably got a lot on, Mo, but you're like, no, how can I help you? Oh, check out what I do with my video. You showed me the lighting, you showed me the video, you showed me, because we were going to be on Zoom. That was so helpful. Now that's how I remember you. Do you know what I mean? It's like that's the key, I think, to that personal brand. How do I help you? Am I there when I'm needed? And do I go above and beyond when I'm not needed?
Yeah. Oh, well, let's grab onto that, because we call those times of being helpful. It's one thing to be helpful when the client can potentially buy something from you, or there's a need, and we should all be helpful then. I think it's oddly maybe even more powerful and more important to be helpful when the other person can't buy your services, because then you're showing them, like, let's take an extreme example. Somebody leaves a job, they're in the marketplace, and they want to network to find their next job, just as a simple example. boy, is that what we call a moment of truth. That's a time to double down and help them even more, because then it's apparent you actually care about them as a human, not as a pocketbook or a purse. And so just give me your thoughts on being helpful. The difference in being helpful when somebody's interested in buying your services and not interested or not able to buy your services.
I think that, I mean, it's been particularly interesting, hasn't it, over the last 2 years with COVID. People's lives have been turned upside down. There was some harsh treatment of people in the first few
Yeah.
months, especially in the States, I observed
Yep.
anyway. Uh, and I think you're right. I think when people are down, that's when you can be helpful, and that's when you should look out for them. And I think you need to take a long-term view on these relationships, and also, and I've only learned this in the last sort of few years, really, but a massive qualifier for me now when I'm trying to sell to anybody, is, do I like them and do they like me? Because I have sold to people that I don't like and they don't like me, and it fails. It just, at some point, it's gonna not work. And if you're in the business of long-term relationships, which we are, with SaaS, you're making money in years 3, 4, and 5, right? That's a dumb way to work.
Yeah.
So you actually need to get on with people. And of course, the other thing, and you're raving fans, the concept is all over this, is if you help people when they're down, then they recommend and refer you because you're a decent
Yeah.
person, and they have a great network. And so, yeah, those would be my learnings over the
Yeah.
last few years. Is you double down when it gets tough for someone.
Well, let's go. Let's go. One more big question in this episode about relationships. One of the things I'm noticing, and it's we've been at this 16 years, trained over 20,000 people. A lot of highly analytical folks, just because we tend to work in industries and in organizations where there's a lot of analytical stuff. High-end experts, whether they're a lawyer, consultant, account manager at a big healthcare company, outsourcer, folks like that. Takes 10 years to even know what you're doing typically in these industries, and then you have to talk to external people or lead the client relationships. So with that in mind, one of the things I'm noticing is that highly analytical people can really resist this idea of talking about anything but their content. So we were just training some folks this morning in Moscow, this morning my time, in Moscow, Germany, Finland, all over, and highly analytical folks, and just really struggling with how do you help somebody outside of your defined expertise, almost like it's bad to help somebody outside of that. How do you think about that? How do you think of helping somebody in a hireable way, but also just a purely human way that doesn't have anything to do with your commercial work that you do?
Yeah. So it's a question. I mean, when you've got a very analytical person, or if you are very analytical and you're quite introverted,
Yep.
and you're told to sell, and you're told to do things, then that's quite difficult for you. You're just going to put the shutters up. Probably the people that you're trying to influence feel the
Yeah,
same.
yeah, it's true.
You've got an awful lot in common. So what you need to do is just find the comfortable space. What would be comfortable to you is probably comfortable with them. So you don't need to go out all salesy. You simply need to be helpful, both on a personal level, but you probably know them because they're probably like you. If you're an actuary, the insurance person who's buying is probably going to be similar to you,
Yep.
and if you're a lawyer, well, you're selling to
Yep.
GCs. So don't so understand who they are as individuals, and think about their personalities and your personalities and what you've got in common. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, and a lot of times people can think, "Oh man, I just couldn't go all the way with this person to, go on holiday with them or go to dinner. It seems like they're a level above me or whatever." But we don't have to worry about going that far. Just going one little click over. Like find a
Yeah.
podcast or the type of book they're interested in from a business perspective. Help them think through their career development. Just something that just one little click over can start being helpful in ways outside of what they
Yeah.
purchase from you, and even that can be huge, and then you can expand from there.
So I had a great example yesterday. I was out with a couple of CMOs, chief marketing officers of law firms, and the conversation turned to them working in the States, and obviously as we're British, the British, and then they were saying, "Oh, we've just got a new German team that literally we've just bought and got it," and we got into this whole cultural kind of conversation about how you do this stuff. And so my immediate thought, and what I've done today, is buy a book called The Culture Map for those CMOs. Now that's got nothing to do with what Passel does. It's got nothing to, but for them, I know that that's a challenge
Yep.
for them. And actually, I just know a few books that are really helpful. I mean, I use your book a lot, but it's working out, oh, this is a problem they have, and how can I
Yep.
help them? The other thing is we call it istatoy. I saw this and thought of you. With ours, it's a bit of a fancy tech, but it's an email with a link in it. But send useful stuff to the people who you like and you'd like to influence as well. Just send them something useful. I saw this and thought of
Yep.
you. And particularly if you're in a business which is billable by the hour, right? And we employ maybe 3 law firms. You want the conversation between the dances, right? You want some chat between the billing, and so make sure that you're reaching out with just useful content, useful information. Anything helpful.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that,
But between the billing is the key bit. Between the
yeah, no,
billing.
I love it. I like the metaphor too, between the dances.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things we were talking about today in this exact training I was mentioning with folks largely in Europe and a bit in Russia is the idea that you win when you hit send. So you send a sort of an insta-toy. Saw this and think of you. That's your language. Sending an asset is our language. Same idea, right? That's part of the reason we bond so much is a lot of the content's just so perfectly aligned. But the key is all technical experts sort of feel like they win when the person writes back immediately within 12 seconds and says, "This is the best thing I've ever seen." No, that's not the goal. You win when you hit send, even if they never reply back. You thought of them, you're building. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and they don't reply.
Yes.
They don't reply. I mean, like, get used to that. And especially, this was a big thing for us culturally in America, is that because of this quite aggressive sales culture here, that if you show a little bit of ankle here, then whoever's selling kind of comes and dives on you. So we're talking to these CMOs yesterday. They get between 10 and 20 vendor emails a day. They get that many phone calls a day. People trying to sell to them. Now, if they reply to any of them, then that person just goes all over them.
It's crazy.
So they don't
Yeah.
reply. That doesn't mean it hasn't had an impact as long as you're sending something useful. But they're not going to reply. So get used to that as well. Get used to and think about your own behaviors, what you do. You don't need a reply for it to be useful. You don't need a reply for it to have an impact. And understand that you just have to be patient.
I love it. Perfect ending of this episode, James. This has been so good. Your last episode was great. This one's great too. We got 3 more coming up, folks. James, where should people go to reach out to you, to say thank you, to learn more about Passel, to pick your brain, whatever?
Feel free to join me on LinkedIn. So link in with me, james@passle.net, or go to our insights page and have a look at our podcasts, because we're just interviewing marketing folk within law firms at the moment, but they've got some incredible insight, and I think even if you're not in law, you'll get a lot out of it.
No doubt about it. The content you guys put out is fantastic, and I've listened to some of those, and it's not just the people talking about what it's like to be a CMO. They're talking about how it works to be a successful rainmaker. I mean, that's the content. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. Okay, so audience, hey, don't forget, subscribe, follow, set up those notifications. We got 3 more big episodes with James coming up. This has been fantastic. James, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Mo. Brilliant.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I have a real treat for you. It's James Barclay. He's CEO of Passle Inc., and we've been having a blast. James, not only are your ideas good, but when you layer on that British accent, they become even better. Like, I think it's so thanks for being on the show. The last 2 episodes were fantastic. So the question to kick this one off is, you've gone through Grow Big training. It was, not a decade ago, but it was a long time ago. You've read Snowball System. What's your favorite science, step, or story, either in Grow Big training or the Snowball System?
So number 1, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Anyone who's listening to this, get on those, get on it. It's fantastic. It's a word I had never heard, but you talked about Protomoy list, and it's the most important list out the most important people in your network, and it's the specifics. It's actually those exact people who you want to influence, and they definitely going to be your clients, who could buy more. You're definitely your prospects, but they're also your partners, your colleagues, the key people in your universe who are going to be your raving fans.
Yes, brilliant. And I'm telling you, what's so powerful about that is so many organizations have like some kind of opportunity pipeline. These are the deals we're trying to close, and they have their CRM or whatever they use to manage those, and they work on that. And that's a bit shorter term. But if I was hiring two people and one person had a really great call it an opportunity list, but they didn't have really great relationships. But I had somebody else that said it had a 1 or 2 year non-compete, but they had incredible relationships. Their relationship pipeline was among the best. Everybody loved them. They're a deep expert. People go to them, ask them questions. I'll pick the person with the better relationships all day long. So tell me your view on how a Protomoy list or having a focused relationship list, a relationship pipeline, if you will, tell the audience how that can help somebody build up that sort of goodwill with the right people.
Sure. I suppose over the time I've kind of built these up, it's not just about what they can buy from you, and that short term kind of like buying cycle where, oh yeah, I bought that
Yep.
from you once. That's grand. But actually, if you invest in that relationship, people move,
Yep.
number one. So we have had clients that buy from us 3 times, in 3 different firms, which is number one. So you build that relationship, and bear in mind that you sometimes don't sell to the person when they're in their present job, but they buy from you in two jobs time. Once they're in a buying position, because they might be quite junior and they're about, but in 5 years' time they're going to be in a position of power. And so you invest in that. The other thing, of course, is that recommendation referral that we've talked about before. They're in the greatest position to recommend and refer you. And I think it's that they know you the best. And so they are talking about you and referring you. And this is true with me and you, Mo. I refer to you all the time without you in the room. And I talk about you all the time to people that I know, and I quote you, and I do it because it makes me look kind of smart, which is neat for me. But because we have a strong relationship, and that's the key. And sometimes that'll lead business to you, sometimes it'll lead business to me. But what they know is that also I have these strong relationships that are important to me, so that I don't look like an island. I look. Yeah, I look like somebody who's surrounded by other people who are grand, I suppose, and clever and help.
And I refer you all the time. And a matter of fact, even this isn't normal, but had you to the house, you got to meet my
Yeah,
wife. You let her beat you
okay.
at board
Yeah.
games, so that was really a smart move.
I
But
got you pouring me cocktails, which wasn't a smart move.
that didn't take long.
Yeah.
That's not a high bar. If somebody walks down the street, I'm like, "Hey, do you want a cocktail?"
No.
But but honestly, you bring great expertise. You're easy to be around, and all those things are super important. So this protomoy list, this idea of writing down, and for the audience, protomoy is a Greek word. It means first among equals. And when I first heard that word back in the 1980s, it just really struck me how cool of a definition that is. There's no English word that is first among equals. And Protomoy really it embodied that idea. So your Protomoy list is 5 to 10 people, maybe 15 or 20 at max, but it's a very short little list of people. You can write on list of names. You can write on a piece of paper, stick it on your desk, tape it to your wall, look at it from time to time. But there's something about that focus that these are my first among equals. These are my most important. And by steering a little disproportionate investment in them, it reaps leveraged rewards. So here's my question. So I just wanted to explain that to everybody if they didn't know. So James, question back to you. So say somebody's got their list. Say they wrote down 10 names. Some are partners, some are clients, some are prospects. They got a colleague or two in there, whatever it is. How do you recommend that they invest in those top people, those first among equals?
Sure. So there's the obvious things, which are inviting them to being useful to them. So making sure that they're coming to events with you, giving them, we often sponsor an event, and I'll reach out to you, Mo, and just say, hey, we've got a free ticket, this
Yeah,
conference,
you do. Yep.
come to it. Now that's just, I could give that to loads of different people, but I've got a hierarchy.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
that roller derby event in Poughkeepsie, I just couldn't make it,
I
but
know.
I
They're
appreciate it.
top notch. But it's reaching out in the traditional ways, like but also thinking, well, how will this be useful to those people? So
Yeah.
not just do you want a ticket to this event, but do you want a ticket to this event? I think it'll be helpful because
Yeah.
the other thing that obviously we're in the content business, so we help very busy experts create content quickly and easily. it's making sure that those people are receiving that content regularly and easily. So
Yeah.
that might be using for us the tool Istatoy. I saw this and thought of you, which is just an email to them. But actually, we've developed another tool called Client Connect, and that is it's usually newsletters are controlled by central marketing, central BD in a firm. And what we've done is put that power into the expert. So you can I can curate a newsletter from the content that we create at Passel that's specifically for Mo. And then I send you an invitation saying, hey, Mo, I've had a think about you. These are the subjects that I think you're going to be interested in. These are the people who I think are going to write content that will resonate with you. And it'll be useful, I think, if you get it once a week or once a month, right? And I send you that as an email so you can then hit subscribe. Now, the way you receive that is, oh, James has curated me this information. He's curated me all that content that those guys create. He's created this for me, and he's thought about me. And so that's much more powerful than me just going, hey, sign up to our newsletter, right? And for me, I don't need 100 or 1,000 people sign up to my newsletter. I need 10 people. I need my Protomoy.
Yeah.
So I know exactly who to invite. And then every week or every month, they're getting the content that I know will resonate with them. They don't get anything else. Don't
Yeah.
send them rubbish is the other thing.
Yeah.
They're not interested if I run a marathon. They're not interested if I've got a new building. They're interested in the stuff that will help them.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is celebrate them at every opportunity. So what you do here, this isn't by accident, this podcast, and we do exactly the same. And that's that make sure that your Protomoy list are being celebrated by you. Give them a platform. Give them something where they feel loved and
Yeah. Yeah.
and they feel that they're valued.
Yeah.
And think about what's in their interest. Introduce them to people who might be useful for their careers.
Well, okay. So I want to go back on a couple things. I want to go deeper on the personal newsletter idea. I think your product name for that's Client Connect.
Yeah.
But I think that is so powerful. I firmly believe that some kind of ongoing cadence to your writing that's sent out by email is massively important. We've got an email newsletter. People go to Grow Big Playbook. They sign up for that. People love it. I spend a decent amount writing it every week, but that's because the platform's really big. In the beginning, I put less time in it. It doesn't take long. But my point with that is the idea of a personal newsletter can be really powerful. One of the senior leaders at a big worldwide management consulting firm we work with, he's got a personal newsletter. He's got actually people that help him put it together. And he only works at one client. So they send it to the top leadership CEO and down at a very large organization. They've got about 50 people that get it. Incredibly powerful. Does it once a month. We've got an insurance broker client, very high end PNC side, and he just puts it in an email newsletter. Yeah. But he started with 10 people, and he once a month sends out links with his 2 cents on what's going on in the insurance industry. Yeah. Well, he's up to 100 and some people that are on it. But he started out with like 8 or something. Yeah. So just comment on the idea of a personal newsletter, because if people have Passel, they can just use Client Connect. But even if they want to just get started now, what would be your top 3 things you would advise them to do?
Sure. You hit it on hit the nail on the head there with, you don't need thousands of people. If you're in most of our clients and your clients, you don't get you don't get loads and loads of money from loads and loads of people. You get money from a few people. So think about them and invest in them. It's going to take you time, Mo. It's going to take you time and effort, but also these people are your key recommenders. They're your key clients. They are valuable to you. So understand that you're going to have to invest. So number 1, invest. Number 2, build something that's extremely accessible to them, that is extremely useful to them, and doesn't have anything useless in it. Don't sell on it. Don't say how wonderful you are. They already know, right? If you're stating that you're brilliant, then you're probably not. so be and don't waste their time. Be conscious of their time. So they probably haven't got hours to read thousands and thousands of words. I read your newsletter every week. It's not long, and it's divided up. It's lines, it's bullet points, and it's short paragraphs, and there's always a to-do in there, and there's always a quote. You've thought about it, you've created it, you know that I'm not going to spend hours reading it, but I want something useful. And that's my main touch point with you. We talk maybe once every couple of months, we talk, or 3 months, but I see you every week.
That's exactly right. So your top 3 are invest some time in this. To your point, it takes a while to get momentum. But heck, even if you start out with 10 people, and let's say it takes you an hour and a half to do the first thing, and let's say you do a personal newsletter monthly, say it takes you an hour and a half. Well, heck, an hour and a half to touch base with 10 of your best important clients or prospects, that's worth it. And like my insurance friend that on the PNC side, now he's up to 100 or more. He still spends the same hour and a half, but he's getting 10 times the impact, right?
And I think that's what we've seen again and again with our clients and with ourselves, is that you invest the time. It might be that it's a year until stuff really starts coming in, but you have to, every great hike starts with a one step. Is that thing? You have to kick it off and get going. And if you can write something useful for one person, then you're going to build over time. But if you don't get going, you won't have any advantage.
I love it. Well, I'll add a third. So if we did invest the time, build something accessible / valuable, I'll add a third, which is just consistency.
Yes.
You got to pick, and I'm saying this to the audience, obviously not to you, but we chose weekly, and that makes sense because I actually really like writing, so it's not a burden or anything. But I spent a lot of time writing that short article every week. I mean, honestly, I spent like 2 hours writing something 400 words because it takes a while to write short. It takes a lot of time. But monthly is a great cadence, and just including links of things that you found interesting in your industry, and putting in 3 or 4 of those with a couple sentences of your 2 cents. That's plenty. That might take an hour, and you might be able to do half of it just right after you read something, write a sentence, and then when you pull together, it's real easy. But my point with that is, people need, for this kind of thing to work, it has to be consistent.
I agree.
You either choose weekly, fortnightly, monthly, no longer cadence than that. Like once a year does not work. No. It does not keep you top of mind.
Got a Christmas card, yeah.
Yeah, and then you just whatever your cadence is, that is like a
and do what you promise as well.
Yeah,
it is your personal brand.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that shows trustworthiness, reliability. Okay, all right. Hey, wrap us up. Last comment just on this idea of Protomoy list. Investing, of course, we went sort of down the rabbit hole of a personal newsletter, but I can't recommend it enough. What's your just sort of parting thoughts on this overall topic of investing in the most important relationships?
Number one, write them down.
Yeah.
That's the thing I took away from your course, is write them down. I use Windows, like literally my Windows in front of me, and I have a pen, and I write my all my colleagues call it my CRM. But
I love it.
Yeah. I've got my window full of lists, and one of those lists is my Protomoy list. It's the people who are most important.
I love it, and you're sitting there staring at it every day.
Yeah, I can sit every day.
Oh, brilliant! I bet you feel compelled to act, because you almost like you're letting them down. So it's very visible. Cool. Well, James, hey, this has been so valuable. Where should people go to reach out to you, say thank you for this, get your thoughts on this kind of thing?
No, thank you, Mo. Best idea is link in with me. I'm pretty good at replying. So link in with me, message me. Also, you can email me, james@passle.net. Love to help you if I can.
Fantastic. Everybody follow, subscribe, do all that stuff to get the show. We got 2 more amazing episodes with James. The last 2 are fantastic. Can't wait to see where we go next. Thanks, James.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue, episode 4 with James Barclay, CEO of Passle Inc., one of the top technology providers to help get your thoughts, get your ideas, get your content out there in the world so digitally, so that people can find you, fall in love with you, and want to hire you. So James, question for the top of this episode. I want you to tell me a story around business development that you're particularly proud of.
Okay. So it's not just me. This is a team effort from Passel, but it's well thought out. And I'll address it, start with the challenge. And our challenge is that we need to talk to CMOs of law firms mainly. And what we often do is we get in touch with people who are further down the chain than the CMO. And that's grand, and it's worked very well, but it takes an awful lot of time to climb the ladder, to go uphill. So if we can have a really useful conversation with the CMO, then we tend to be able to sell what we sell much more effectively than if we go in lower down. It's just the nature of the strategic tool we sell. So the challenge we had was how do we get to the CMO? The solution that as a team we came up with, and this is not by far not just me. This is our brilliant marketeer, Sam Page and Natasha and the team really coming up with this was our podcast. And so the way we use and we'd always wanted podcasts because it's great content and blah, 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 blah. But we realized that it was a fundamental business development tool because the salespeople could go in and invite CMOs to be part of our CMO series podcast. And so the introduction is not, hey, I'd love to tell you about Passel. The introduction is, hey, we think that CMOs in law firms are underrepresented as far as fans go. We think that you guys do an amazing job. We think that you are, and it's true, that you're not celebrated like you should be in other businesses. Partnerships are a bit harder work than if you're Coca-Cola, right? It's just there's a different dynamic going on. So this gave us an opportunity to have a chat with the CMO. So we end up being able to talk to CMOs very easily about the podcast. They talk about their passions, their leadership, what they know all about. We get to know them that way. And at some point during that process, once you've now got the introduction with them, at some point they start asking us about what we do.
Yep.
And then we can talk to them about Passel, and it might or might not be a fit, but we're in the right room with the right person having the right conversation. Yep. And the vehicle to get there was our CMO podcast. Plus, of course, it builds on itself because the more fantastic content you have, the more people want to be on the podcast, which means that CMOs are coming to us saying, hey, I want to be on your podcast.
Yeah.
And it wasn't developed that way. We just wanted to have some content, but it's just been fabulous. And it's just been a really neat way to get to know the people who might buy from us.
Oh, I love it. So let's run down this topic because, you're a deep technical expert in how to get your content out there digitally, right? Podcast is one way to do it. Writing is another. Using Passel, you're actually technology to get content out there. So this is incredibly powerful. So how would you recommend? I'm going to go a little bit higher level. Let's say that an expert was thinking about having a podcast, or maybe even doing webinars, writing, whatever. What would you tell them specifically around podcasts that they would do to make something successful?
Sure. I think with what we learned is, for us, short and sharp are better than long and long.
Yeah.
So 10 to 15 minutes max, brilliant. You need to celebrate whoever your person is that you're interviewing. You need to give them a platform because particularly in our business, quite often those people aren't given the platform they deserve, or their expertise isn't celebrated. So you need to do that. You need a theme. Don't just make it whatever I think of this week. It needs to have a core to it. With us, it's CMO, CMBDO, a business development and marketing experts in law talking about what they're passionate about. And I think, and then it's a case of getting going, and it goes slowly, and learn as you go. You're not going to be perfect at it the first go, but each time do a feedback loop and say, hey, what worked, what didn't work?
Yep.
What's nice now is the same way as we're using technology today. Everybody's confident now on this technology. Yep. No one's worried about it. They used to be, and they're not anymore. Everyone's talking on Zoom now for 2 years.
Yeah, 100%. And what's really neat about these I love your three things. Make it short, celebrate the interviewer, and have a theme. One of the things I've learned about this, and we just got the numbers for last month as we record this, we doubled our downloads just in 1 month. And we had been at it 18 months, but the numbers are staggering. Like it's 4 to 5 times as big as our email or weekly email list now, our podcast is. And we spent 8 or 10 years building that up. Like it's amazing how people are devouring digital content these days. And a podcast is a great way to do it.
And don't stress about it being complicated. If you use Zoom, start by recording on Zoom and just going for it. If you muck it up, it's really easy to edit stuff. Get somebody in your team who's keen and excited to do the editing. They'll become an expert in that. Don't overthink it. Just get going. The other thing I was just going to mention there is, if you can, provide feedback to whoever was on your podcast with you. Tell them the numbers. Hey, so this many people listened. These are the people who listened. Whatever the good news is, make sure that you've told them afterwards, so that then they sit there and go, hey, I was on that podcast, but it was cool because such and such listened to it. They'll be proud of it too, and they can share it. You're giving them an opportunity to recommend and refer you.
Yep. Oh, I love this. Okay, so can I give you 3 ideas and you react to these?
Sure.
So these are things I've learned because I love your 3. I'll give you 3, and then you give me some reaction. By the way, I really loved your short one. Our numbers spiked when we went from hour-long episodes to 10 to 15-minute episodes. Like that one switch changed everything. So I just want to reinforce what you said, audience, what James said is brilliant. Shorter is better. Okay, here's my three things. I really like seasons. Seasons, like our season 1 and 2 were all about sort of big famous author speaker types, friends and friends of friends. That was fun. I've actually liked season 3 almost even better, where I'm interviewing my favorite rainmakers. Well, there's a theme to it. Season 4 is
Yeah,
going to be different. Season 5 will be different. I think
yeah.
seasons are sort of cool, almost like a season of a TV show. The second thing is I think it's been fun this season to have the same exact 5 questions for each interviewer or
Okay.
interviewee.
Yeah.
And that's going to be neat because it takes me so much less time to prep because I already know what the questions are going to be. I don't have to rethink it based on the person's background and take 5 hours. And because I really did take 5 hours in the old days. So the same 5s are cool. And that's going to let us at the end of the year have slice up the
Well, yeah,
interviews.
you can slice and dice it. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, yeah.
I can have 3 different people answer the same question in the audience. Hey, get ready for this because it'll come in a couple of months. And you'll get to have 3 different amazing people answer the same question. And I think that's neat.
I love that. And I love the fact that that gives you a resource on your website where you can have the question and then you can have the answers
Yeah.
from, and they're short, pithy pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's class. I love the seasons idea. I mean, you're an author, and so you think in chapters.
Yeah.
And your Grow Big course is in chapters, and
Yeah.
so that's natural to you. And I think that's the thing we could learn actually
Yep.
is how we start dishing this up. The other thing that we've done on that 5 questions and that slicing and dicing is that you can use the content in multiple ways. So you create once, publish everywhere.
Yes.
Right. So you can then, for example, when we have done this, is you take a snippet of your podcast that's really useful. You can put some paid advertising behind it and put it into LinkedIn. And so you're hitting exactly the people you want who are similar to the people who you've got on your podcast with that content. And that's the way they get into you. So you can really slice and dice, and then you can sweat the asset once you've created it.
I love it. I love it. And then I just feel compelled to say the third thing.
Sorry, yes, absolutely.
That's okay because I really like the create once, publish everywhere. But the third thing is my podcast producer wrote about this once and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And he said, make sure you know what the win is for the interviewee.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Because most people just assume, well, I'll have you on my show and you'll love it. But maybe they have a charity they want to promote. Maybe they have a special story they want to tell. Maybe when they want to talk about one of their teammates to publicly to prop them up, there's some win for them. And I think asking them what that'll be beforehand is really important. Anyway, your thoughts on all this? Wrap up this episode. Podcasts are awesome. There's so much power in them. There's a lot of them, but we're just getting started. This industry is going to explode. Your thoughts on the idea of experts having a podcast?
I think again, it's similar to the when we've had similar past conversations. Get going, give it a go.
Yeah.
Prepare. What you said there. What is it? What is in it for them is really, really important. Don't necessarily think that you know what they want to talk about. Talk to them about it and say, hey, what questions should we have? One of the other things that we've just started doing is you can get their colleagues to interview them as well. So we call it kind of passing the buck really, and so we get them. So a CMO will be interviewed by their head of business development, and so they'll have a chat. You host it, you start it and you finish it, but actually they're having an internal chat, and that means that you're bringing 2 stakeholders together and you're celebrating both of them, and that's gone really well.
Well, that's like a pro ninja tip. I like that. I'd never even thought of that.
Well, it gets you out of doing any of the questions. I really like your 5 questions because ultimately you're not just looking for the initial hit of someone listening to it once. You've got that content. You then slice it and dice it and use it again and again.
Yeah. So like at the end of our last season, we did some greatest hits episode and we had the data. We knew what people liked the most because we had a couple episodes that people actually, the average listen percentage was more than 100%, meaning the average person rewound and listened because they got a lot of value out of it. Well, so we knew those were the best ones. And then we could take instead of a one interviewer hearing in their 5 questions or one interviewee, we would take a question and then hear 3 different people answer it. It was just super cool. All right, James.
And like all content, be useful. Just be useful.
Just be useful.
Be helpful and useful.
I love it. It's your mantra in life, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, James, thanks for being on the show. Hey, where should people go if they want to reach out to you, say thank you, ask you a question?
Sure. Go to LinkedIn, link in with me, or send me a note, james@passle.net. Be great to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Awesome. Everybody follow, subscribe. We got one more big episode with James coming up next. Can't wait to give it to you.
Thank you, Mo. Brilliant. See you soon.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. Hey, this is the 5th of 5 amazing episodes with James Barclay, CEO of Passel Inc. And we have been having a blast. In this episode, James, we've invented a time machine. You can go back to your younger self. You can record a video and you can send it back to your former self to instruct your younger self because you're perfect now. I know that. But all
You're a liar.
I don't even know. I think we've been having so much fun on this. I'm kidding. But anyway, I was up till like 12:30 last night training folks in Asia, and I think I'm a little bit tired. Anyway, if you could go back and send a video to your former self around business development and give some advice, what would you say?
I think the key thing that I've learned is patience.
Mm.
That's the big one. I mean, I'm deeply impatient, and I still am. But I've learned that I can't. It doesn't help. That you don't sell stuff by shouting at someone that they must buy it. You've got to work out what their buying process is, and that's the key. There, it isn't your sales process; it's their buying process.
Yeah.
And people like buying stuff.
Yeah.
People like buying stuff if they need it and they want it and they realize that they need it and want it because you've done a half decent job of influencing them. But that can take time and you've got to wait until that right moment. So I would say, yeah, just chill out don't sweat the small stuff as much. Think about those leading indicators. Think about the actions of what you can do consistently that'll lay groundwork for outcomes as opposed to focusing on the outcomes. You don't sell something in a phone call. You do it over time and it takes effort. But it takes time.
Well, I think that's why we just get along so great. I mean, even the tagline in Grow Big is designing a better buying process right there. Not selling, but creating a buy. People don't like to be sold to. They love to buy. So create that buying process that works for them. So question back to you, in the trenches of day-to-day life, we all still have goals. Some lawyer out there has got a target, they've got a bogey, they've got originations that they're trying to bring in. You've got a consultant, you've got an account manager that has a certain retention percentage and a growth plan, all that kind of stuff. It's easy to have these things collapse, the weight of them like collapse on you and you feel that pressure. How do you get vulnerable here? How do you personally somehow remove that weight, focus back on yourself and keep doing the things that will make you successful?
Number one, I'm not sure I do it all the time. So I think accept that, accept the fact that you're often fighting fires. But I think what it is for me, it's surrounding myself with people who support that. I think that's really important. I think that you have to have this as an environment and a culture in your firm. It can't just be as an individual. When I get impatient and lose, and start going off on one, then I've got 2 or 3 people who will tell me. They'll tell me quite specifically, no, you're doing that thing that you do. So really make sure that you're listening and you're surrounded by people you trust and who have seen your vulnerabilities and you have a completely transparent relationship with, so that they are in a position to tell you when, knock it down or speed it up. And that really, for me, that really, really helps. I'm not sure I can do this in isolation. For me personally, what I try to do is just put some time aside. One of the things that you taught me was on a Friday, make a list for next week. And the three most important things. And I talk about them all the time. 3 most important things next week, 3 most important things today. And you either do them or you don't do them. And you write them down and you tick the boxes. And did you do them? Yes, great. Didn't you do them? Why didn't you? And that takes 5 minutes, So I love your 3 most important things.
I write mine on a little note just like this, a little like 3x5 card, and I sit it out. I think it's something powerful about tactically handwriting it. There's a bit of more of a commitment there than typing for some reason. And then it sits out. And it sits out and stares at you all week like, it's Thursday and I only have 1 done. I'm going to have to do my
And it gets, especially since we've moved to the States, my world is UK centric as far as the firm. So our mornings are crazy here.
Yeah.
But then in the afternoon, I get about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I start getting a bit of time where I'm like, now I can. The other thing, sorry, I'm going to go on, and you always tell me off for
Go.
going on. But the other thing is, notice that your best ideas probably don't come when you're sitting looking at a screen.
Mm.
Your best ideas are quite often when you're on for a run, or you're watching the kids play football at the weekend, or you're having a bath, whatever it is. But that's something, accept the fact that your best ideas don't come necessarily when you're at work. And just have a mechanism of writing those down. Don't interrupt your day. Don't stop watching your kids play football. But just realize that that's also sometimes when the best ideas come.
There's a rhythm I've been in lately where I'll go on a 6 or 8 mile run on Saturdays, and believe me, it's very slow. It's not impressive.
I do 3 or 4 miles. Yes.
I think so. One time, a friend honked, and I heard the honk. I didn't know who it was, and he emailed me, and I knew who it was. And I'm like, I'm a little embarrassed that Dave saw me running because I was turning it pretty slow. But anyway, there's something about that time that lets me process. Like I'm processing the week, I'm processing business, I'm processing personal, and every single run, I come back, grab a pencil, and I had like 2 or 3 really like big ideas that came from that time. There's something about the motion, I don't know what it is, but to your point, not staring at a screen, not watching TV, just separating, and that's where the big ideas seem to come, and then I can act on them.
I had a chat yesterday to CMOs. We're having lunch of law firms, and we were talking about sleep. And I was just saying, for me, a really important part of my life is to make sure I get a solid 8. Because I am a solid 8 hours sleep a night. If I'm down to 5, I'm useless. I'm useless as a human being.
Yeah.
Solid 8, I'm much better. So you have to also look after you have to set the foundations so that you can succeed. And for me, one of those is a good night's sleep. I mean, it sounds silly, but it's really, really important.
Hey, maybe we could come up with the sleep business development method. Like nobody's done it, right?
Exactly.
Sleep more.
Yeah, pad and paper next to your bed. But I'm just not a great believer in the whole kind of showing off about 3 hours sleep and feeling exhausted. It don't work.
No, I totally agree. I'm 100%. Well, listen, I know this is a shorter episode, but we really we've got to keep this one short for some different reasons that we both know. So, where should people go? I think it's good to end on sleep. We'll just end.
Absolutely. Get a good night's sleep. Set yourself up with a run, and then your business development looks after itself.
Exactly. Yeah. How should Mo, James? How can I grow my book of business in my career? You should run and sleep more.
You go. There's a book.
All right. So there you go. So,
a LinkedIn post. Yeah.
Where should people go to ping you, to talk to you, to say thank you for the show, all these other great shows and everything else?
Absolutely. Go to LinkedIn, link in with me, James Barclay, Passel. But also just drop me a note, james@passle.net. Be great to hear from you.
Hey, this has been awesome. I've had a blast having you on the show. Yeah. Thanks a ton.
Thank you for the opportunity. I love being with you. It's great to see you.
I feel the exact same way. Thanks, James.
Cool. Good to see you. Bye-bye.